Well, very often we see people who know that the financial decisions they're making probably aren't the best, right? But they use excuses or explanations for why they're doing what they're doing. But let's talk about why these excuses usually just don't hold water.
Sure, let's dig into it and let's chat about it a bit.
Welcome to Uncommon Sense, where ordinary financial wisdom just doesn't cut it. Follow along with Eric Bowman as he provides clarity in a cluttered financial world.
Well, hello and welcome into Uncommon Sense. Ben George with Eric Bowman of Bowman Financial Strategies, located there in Colorado, but working with clients nationwide. If you have any questions and want to learn more, just go to bowmanfinancialstrategies.com. Do you get a lot of excuses, Eric, when people come in and you ask them questions or ask them, hey, why did you do this? Or why are you investing in that?
I think one of the biggest hurdles is why people don't get retirement planning done in the first place. I mean, that's the biggest excuse is, there's too much inertia. I'm too busy. They don't do the planning. That's really the biggest challenge I think we have. Once we get into the planning process with an appropriate education in many things, I think we can overcome that. I mean, there are definitely some initial Social Security thoughts that people have and they feel a little bit married to, but in reality, they might not be the best decisions. But I think getting people to take the step to actually get a solid retirement plan done from a credible source is a step one and the hardest thing, I think, for many people to, move into and actually accomplish.
Yeah, it's a good one. I got 5 excuses, though, that I think you probably have heard a time or two. I'm going to throw them your way, and I want you just to combat them for us, explain why this should be the case, kind of push back against each one of these excuses for us. So I'll start off with Social Security. I know that's something that you work on people quite a bit, helping them understand a little bit more. But when someone wants to start their Social Security at age 62, this is what they sometimes say. Well, I've been paying into the system for years and years, and I want to make sure I get my money back before this whole thing goes bankrupt.
Yeah. So I don't know if I should get real academic on this or not, but the bottom line is if you file at 62, you're going to receive a significantly smaller check for the rest of your life. If you live a long time, there's going to come a time when you're in your mid 70s or approaching 80, and you're going to look back and go, holy moly, I wish I would have delayed taking my Social Security check so I had a bigger check. The rationale of I've paid into the system and, they're going to go bankrupt. Let's define what that looks like. So the government does a calculation every year to show roughly when Social Security is going to, quote unquote, run out. Well, what does run out mean? Run out means that the trust fund, the big bucket of money, runs out, but it doesn't mean there's still not ongoing Social Security payroll tax coming into the system. So in the early 2030s, I think it's like 2032, 2033, it changes a little bit each year. That's when the trust fund is projected to run out. And what happens is the payroll taxes will still come in, which are able to pay over 70% of all benefits, which are Social Security benefits, disability benefits, a lot of benefits out. Then the question becomes, well, what happens if that's the case? Are they going to have a 25% cut, for example, across the board? And I would say, let's look at history. Go back to the 80s under Ronald Reagan, and in particular, the Greenspan Commission. So Alan Greenspan back then had this commission because they were going to run out of money in Social Security back in the 80s. And they said, what are we going to do? Well, what they did was they increased full retirement age for people born after a certain date. So my FRA, my full retirement age, is now 67, not 66. That 1 year makes a big difference on the solvency of Social Security. So my hunch is that the people that are going to feel the most pain will definitely be the younger generations because they're going to probably increase full retirement age out farther and farther. In addition, what that does, I call it a twofer. Number one, it means that the government will probably pay out less benefits over time because they're going to start later, and they will accumulate more assets into the trust fund over time because people will be working longer to, satisfy their income until they actually retire. And there's another 30 recommendations or so from the government where they know the legislative branch can evaluate these 30 some odd solutions, but they all result in one of two things. How can the government pay out less and get more money into the system? And at some point, when the political pressure is great enough, which will be probably pretty close to the early 2030s, that's when they'll fix it, just like they did in the 80s. I would not plan on not having Social Security, because if that's the case, most people would be in a world of hurt, and I think they would be planning for a world that's probably not going to be in their future, meaning Social Security in one form or another, probably very similar in magnitude to the way they're looking at their statements now, will be reality, and you should plan like that.
Yeah, having a little bit of maybe questions about the future of Social Security is definitely good for campaigning, but getting rid of it would not be good for the future for politicians. So there'll be changes made, I'm sure, but it's good to know that we can rely on hopefully something being there. But
Yep.
Important to have those conversations. All right, so that's the first excuse. Here's one too. When someone ends up taking too much risk for their money, with their money, they'll often say, well, I feel like I'm behind on my savings, trying to play catch up a little bit. So I'm trying to make up for lost time by taking on more risk.
It depends where you're at in your saving, accumulation, and distribution timeline. So when you're accumulating, I think that we all have to take some risk in order to achieve returns. There is a correlation typically of risk and return. The more risk, the better return over the long run. Everybody's heard of dollar cost averaging. I put my money into my investments, and if the market goes down, I'm buying on sale. And then when the market recovers, all those stocks or whatever it is that I bought on sale recover, and I make my rate of return that's significant. Most people understand dollar cost averaging is a mathematical benefit to people. In retirement, the exact opposite situation is true. It's called sequence of return risk. When you're distributing from an account, taking money out while the market may be on a downturn, you are leaving your brokerage accounts in particular in a very poor position. And the more risk that you take in a brokerage account in retirement, which increases the ups and downs and the roller coaster ride, you increase your exposure to sequence of return risk. If you were 10 years before retirement, even 5 years before retirement, having meaningful risk in that account, I'm okay with. But when you start to distribute, you have to go into this protection mode where you protect a portion of assets from volatility for distributions and try to achieve meaningful returns through an appropriate amount of risk for your timeline and needs. So I would just say you have to balance the risk with the appropriate time in your life.
All right, fair enough. So important to kind of get that balance. And if you have questions about how to find that balance, what's too much risk, what's enough risk, what you're comfortable with, again, have conversation with Eric. Go to Bowman Financial Strategies.com.
Social Security planning can be complex, but you don't have to navigate it alone. Visit our one-stop Social Security resource at BowmanFinancialStrategies.com. Discover detailed videos, downloadable PDF guides, and the latest updates from the Social Security Administration. Don't let Social Security questions hold you back. Click the link in the show description and bring Social Security into focus.
All right. A lot of people keep money in cash, and oftentimes way too much money in cash. And they'll often explain it by saying something like, well, that last market crash, I lost a lot in it, and I'm not comfortable with that. I don't want to go down that road again, so I'm just going to leave it here in cash.
Yeah. Usually when somebody said they lost a lot in the market, let's say 2008 or even 2022, it's because they pulled their money out at exactly the wrong time, which is when the market was low. In 2022, for example, the market dropped precipitously from February of 2022 until October of 2022. That was roughly 7 months. The market has gone straight up since October 2022 until now. With that said, if they would have just kept their money in the market and ridden that cycle out, they would have been okay. Same back in 2008. But because they're humans, people make emotional decisions. So the emotion of losing money, the emotion of saying, I can't lose any more, I've got to take it out of the market now, I can't afford to lose all of it, which has never happened, right? The market has always recovered every time, 100% of the time. I can prove that out because right now in 2024, we're here in June, and the market just hit an all-time high. That means it has surpassed all previous values in the stock market, which means that 100% of the time the stock market recovers. I believe that pattern will continue. So with that said, keeping it in cash and not seeking any level of return, even through moderate or low risk investments, creates a situation where there's a chance you won't have enough money to live the life you want in retirement. You'll have to really cut expenses because you're not growing those assets. When we build a retirement plan, we make a baseline assumption of earning roughly 4 to 4.5% rate of return. If a plan works at 4.5% rate of return, then we go about determining an investment solution that has the least risk that we can take to try to achieve reasonably a 4 to 4.5% annualized return over the long run. So there are ways to overcome that. It just, many people don't even know the tools that are available. We use option strategies to reduce risk. There are various annuity solutions you can use to reduce risk and still have the potential for upside gains. I think sometimes it's a lack of knowledge of what's available out there.
Yeah, lack of knowledge is an issue many times, and it kind of takes this right into our next excuse here, because when someone has no idea what they're invested in or really what their money is doing for them, the excuse is, hey, look, financial stuff is just not my thing, right? Is that a valid excuse?
Well, I mean, it's true sometimes, right? People, they don't want to take a second career of learning about finances. Here's the way I evaluate that. I mean, it's my profession. So it is my job to know this in detail, have an academic knowledge of it, have some knowledge of all the tools that are available and how to adjust portfolios, for example, with a household's risk tolerance. But for a person who maybe had another job for their entire life and they're getting into retirement planning, what I want them to do is to get educated, not become a subject matter expert, but get baseline educated. And we have a lot of resources on our website, videos in particular, podcasts, blogs, just educational videos, you name it, where they can get some baseline education. But in the moment, when you're in the office with a retirement planner, you need to understand in detail in the moment for decision-making purposes. You're not going to get a test on it when you walk out the door. Did you remember that? Did you remember this? But you really do need to understand it in the moment for decision-making purposes. And you also, I use this word a lot, you have to be discerning. You need to know what questions to ask. And one of the very great questions that I think a potential client should ask somebody is, what are the risks of this investment strategy or of this recommendation you're making that we haven't talked about yet? That's a pretty good way to pull out of the woodwork maybe some details that you should understand if the advisor hasn't already talked about it. I think that that's an important question. Are there any risks, anything that you haven't spoken about that I should know about because this is a complex investment solution, for example? And I think any financial advisor, number one, should be talking about them already. They should be the top priority, is to always go through the pros and cons and the material pros and cons of every investment strategy and every income choice. But if they haven't for some reason, that catch-all question can help put you on the right path.
All right, very good. I got one more excuse for you, Eric.
Okay.
And look, when someone doesn't want to leave a broker or an advisor, even when they know they should, there's a lot of reasons why they might decide to stay. But one of the biggest ones is they'll say, I've been working with him or her for a long time. I don't want to hurt that friendship.
Right. It's a great, I mean, I do hear that one fairly often. It doesn't end up being a big hurdle in the long run because think about it. When you're entering into retirement, most people have been working with an investment advisor, not a retirement planner. When it comes to investment advice, that's one of our many categories that we provide advice on. A true investment advisor, when you're in your 40s and 50s, that's all they do is put you in a portfolio for the most part. They don't understand taxes, Social Security, pensions, distribution strategies, legacy planning, and working with estate planning lawyers and accountants. They just know portfolio development. In addition, if you go from 2010 to 2020, for example, the market kind of sort of went straight up with some blips along the way. So you made money, which is a great thing, but anybody in the market would have made money during that time, right? Just by keeping you exposed, which can be a challenge in and of itself, keeping a client on track and making sure they're balancing that fear and greed. So really important. But let's use a medical analogy. If you have a very serious illness, like cancer or something like that, you're going to get a second opinion. It doesn't matter if your primary care physician or your oncologist is your brother. You're going to probably go get a second opinion. And if you got a second opinion that made you more comfortable, it's probable that you may decide to go with that other person relative to working with your brother who you love to death, but maybe doesn't quite give you that sense of confidence that the other person did. So I would always say you are responsible for all of your decisions. They are not. So because of that, you have to be responsible on whether or not you're going to decide to engage with somebody else. And we just think that it's important to get a second opinion, no matter who your current advisor is. And then we're all grown-ups. If it makes sense for you to move to somebody who provides the services that you need in a fashion that seems more credible and accurate, then sometimes you've got to make those tough decisions and make that move. And we've helped people, gain that confidence to make that move uncountable number of times. And at the end of the day, it never ends up being as big of a deal as they think it is in their own mind.
I'm assuming that's kind of where that complimentary consultation that you offer people and that you can schedule right now on bowmanfinancialstrategies.com. That's kind of where that comes in, right? If you are curious to learn more, especially about you and what you offer from the financial planning realm, that's a good place to take advantage of that, right?
Yeah, 20-minute phone call. I can understand the basics of the potential client's goals and concerns. They can ask any questions that they have of me, regulatory questions, history, my experience, whatever those questions may be. And then we can determine by the end of a brief 20-minute call whether or not I can help, and if so, what that exact next step would be.
Awesome. Again, bowmanfinancialstrategies.com. That is the website. On there, you'll find this podcast, plus a lot of other educational videos, other resources, services, a lot of different stuff on the website. So be sure to check it out. Spend a little time there. No matter where you're listening from, whether it be in Colorado or elsewhere in the nation, you can log on, check it out right there. But please subscribe to the podcast, the show, wherever you listen, wherever you watch this on YouTube. Please subscribe. We appreciate the support there. Helps us continue to grow. Eric, thanks for your time as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it too. It was great talking with you today.
Yeah, you as well. We'll do it again soon. Thanks for watching.
Bye-bye.